The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is one of my favorite games ever. It's something that I consider so important to my younger self that, as sad as this is to admit, it remains a game I've only played the once as a kid because I don't want to taint that experience I had. So imagine my anticipation a few years later upon hearing that my dearly beloved had a direct sequel by the name of Majora's Mask. I would immediately purchase it because I needed more of that heroic adventure in my veins. I wanted to capture that same sense of excitement, and I was convinced that this game would be the closest thing to feeling that again. So I'd boot it up and I'd play it, and I'd play it some more, and I'd play it again, and it quickly became obvious I didn't feel the same way about Majora's Mask. In fact, I despised it. It wasn't the swashbuckling tale of epic proportions that I was hoping it would be. It was weird. The Master Sword, the Triforce, Ganon, Zelda, Hyrule, elements I considered crucial to the Zelda experience were nowhere to be found here, and its tone was way darker than anything I was used to at the time. The story was about a land threatened by an impending apocalypse. The Skull Kid using the power of the ancient Majora's Mask to pull the moon down from orbit, leaving Link with only 3 days to stop it from crashing into the Earth. While I was willing to embrace this darker direction, it was the way in which Majora's Mask played that I had a major problem with. Because it was physically impossible to complete everything required of you within these 3 days, which equated to about an hour of real time spent playing, it meant you'd have to revert time constantly. Playing a song on your ocarina allowing you to time travel back to the dawn of the first day to continue progressing. You'd do this as many times as needed until you conquered the game's 4 dungeons and enlist the help of the giants within them to successfully face and defeat the Skull Kid. But playing this for the first time, my puny child brain just couldn't understand this concept. The idea of going back to progress forward, as the only way you could save the game properly was upon reverting time. But doing so would mean any half-completed progress you had made within side quests or dungeons would just undo as if they'd never happened. To make matters worse, you'd also lose all of your consumable items. My hard-earned health potions, arrows, money, they too would disappear like they never existed, meaning every play session ended with this morale-crushing discouragement. And before I could even properly understand how to combat this, I'd become increasingly agitated by the anxiety-inducing clock that was permanently plastered to the bottom of the screen, forever pressuring me, a constant reminder of how little time I had to complete anything. Majora's Mask frustrated my younger self in a way that I had never really experienced. For the first time in my life, there was a barrier of entry to a game not because I wasn't skilled enough, but solely because I found its design convoluted and oppressive. I quickly put Majora's Mask down, and after doing some snooping online, it seems like I wasn't the only one. As far as I was concerned, it was just too complicated to be considered anything other than a disappointment, a stain on an otherwise near-perfect game series. So there it sat, ignored and untouched, as I embraced many future Zelda games, for all of which I at least saw credits roll, regardless of any issues I'd have with them. Years of my life would pass before I ever thought about Majora's Mask again. In my time away from it, I grew up. I finished school, I became an adult, and was fortunate enough to attend university. And it was when I was sitting in a class, in an elective I hated, where my mind began wandering. I'd become increasingly salty at the idea that the dozens of hours I was spending in this class was time that I couldn't get back. I was using those hours to do something I didn't even like. However dramatic this may sound, my bitterness just kind of put into perspective how little time I have on this earth. I started to imagine how any aspirations I dreamed of or any relationships I had made could just be ripped away from me by an illness or an accident or a mistake as early as tomorrow. And it was during this little hissy fit of mine happening in the middle of class where, for whatever reason, I was reminded of Majora's Mask. It's like this game I hated knew what that feeling was like. The paralyzing fear of wasting your time. Far too curious to stop thinking about it, I'd go home and play it that night. And it's like I was playing a different game to the one I'd remembered. It's like the people of Termina were facing the reality that I was only imagining. Facing every fear, every insecurity, every regret I was having regarding my own mortality. These people had to comprehend and accept that their time was coming to an end, that all they had in their final hours were the memories of how they spent them previously. And watching this play out provided my younger self a catharsis and an escape that I was desperate to indulge in. Because when I wanted to hear it most, Majora's Mask reiterated to me that nobody is guaranteed time. Maybe it was because I was older, with more life experience, viewing the world in a completely different way than I did when I was 12. It's like something clicked in my mind that finally allowed me to play Majora's Mask. And what I found was a message that I had just missed the first time around as a smug teenager who got their kicks from dismissing and disparaging popular media. For the first time, I wasn't judging this game, I was beginning to understand it. Because in my time away, I'd learnt what it was like to be out of time, to recognize that it's our most valuable asset. The tone of this game wasn't weird for the sake of being edgy, it was an atmosphere born from the despair of the people of Termina, a collection of all their negative emotions as they each came to terms with the fact they had no time left. The events available were deliberately open-ended and non-linear because the game wanted you to experience these final 3 days from every angle, demanding you not only understand this sequence of time, but that you master it so you can experience everything it has to offer. And its time restrictions served as a deliberate pressure that served to teach you its core gameplay loop, of both helping others and manipulating time and lands to acquire key items that then allows you to venture further the next occasion you rewound time, creating a satisfying experience where you would gain more understanding and become more efficient every time you sat down to play. I feel silly admitting it took me years to come to this realization, but it quickly became apparent that for my entire adolescence, I had been misunderstanding Majora's Mask. So in this video, I'd like to make the argument for Majora's Mask that my younger self wishes he could have seen, an explanation of what I think it does well and why I found it so appealing, albeit on my second time around. Additionally, I'd like to mention the people behind it, what it did to successfully distinguish itself amongst the rest of the series, and how it managed to carve out its own cult following, somehow becoming my favorite Zelda game in the process. And to get into all of this, it's important that we begin by discussing what I believe to be the strongest asset of Majora's Mask, that being its harrowing atmosphere and how it differed from anything we were used to before it. There's a passage in Ocarina of Time that's referenced as a significant moment in the history of not only the Legend of Zelda series, but of video games as a medium. It's the point in the story when Link leaves the Kokiri forest for the first time. Narratively, it's a pretty big deal as the Kokiri tribe are never supposed to leave their forest, but the reason it was considered so impactful was because of what it meant in terms of gameplay, as what awaited Link was the expansive, seemingly endless Hyrule field. At the time, in 1998, this moment was considered an act of wizardry, a benchmark of technical achievement that an area in a console game could be this large. And as you stepped forth and the music began to swell, you'd realize you can explore all of this. That grass over there, you can go frolic in it. That enemy over there, you can go ruin his day. And that ominous mountain in the distance, you can go there and climb that. It's like in this single moment, the feeling of Ocarina was defined. There was a sense of scale, of danger, of wonder, a feeling you're partaking within a heroic adventure of grand proportions. This moment isn't in Majora's Mask. The defining feeling of Majora's is an unrelenting pressure, unease made possible by the story, themes, sound design, music, and gameplay all working together to almost punish the player. Traversing Termina is incredibly immersive, but exploration doesn't exclusively evoke emotions of excitement and adventure. Often it's dread-inducing and heartbreaking. You're abandoned in a world that's suffering, one that requires constant vigilance to survive in, filled with people who are hurting. And unlike the Kokiri forest in Ocarina, leaving the starting area in Majora's isn't nearly as liberating. It's actually kind of overwhelming. Having Clocktown sit in the center of this game's world creates a feeling of entrapment by a land plagued by beings that are out to get you. This centralized hub, meaning heading off in any direction, brings with it a terror of the unknown. A journey that I think felt far more dangerous than any of the Zelda games before it, because in Termina, the threat is always there. We've mentioned the pressure brought down on the player by the clock visible on the HUD, but I've always found the moon to be the true, more impactful catalyst for panic, as it exists within the game world, visible for Link and the people of Termina. As it slowly approaches with each passing hour, it brings with it a dominating presence and the reminder that you're running out of time, and remains visible from almost anywhere within Termina at all times. An enemy that you're never really told by an NPC to look up at and acknowledge at the beginning of the game. At some point you just kind of notice it's there, and from then on it stalks you with this expression that I can only describe as pained. The suspicion of always being watched, creating this constant reluctance as you explore this game world. You only need to glance at the barren and broken Akana Canyon to get a sense of how bleak and depressing exploring some of the locations in Majora's can be. That being said, I actually think Majora's is at its most immersive when Link is within the game's hub area, as this uncomfortable unease is also felt and referenced by the many residents of Clocktown. The moon and the complications it brings directly impacting their lives and behavior, creating this palpable sense of escalating mass hysteria. Like when we talk to the prideful instructor of the swordsman school, who declares he'll be the sole savior of the town, only to find him in a heap, shaking uncontrollably as the moon draws near in the final minutes of the third day. Or how during the final hours at Romani's ranch, we can witness Cremia deciding to give her child sister what is implied to be alcohol for the first time, in order to make the end of the world just that little bit more bearable for her. And it's everyone's reactions like this to the oppressive atmosphere created by the moon that lends itself to the believability of Clocktown as a living, breathing place. While not the biggest town in an adventure or role-playing game, Clocktown offers a density that I think has yet to be matched by another area in a Zelda game. Rather than existing as NPC models to just fill in this space, everyone within Clocktown are legitimate characters with relationships, problems, businesses, and schedules that must be adhered to, each performing an unwavering set of actions over the 72 hours that will remain consistent regardless of how many times you rewind to the first day. Unlike in other games where an NPC may remain static in their position for your entire playthrough, existing purely to serve the player, the residents of Clocktown are always moving and can be found in and traveling to various locations throughout the 3 days. Other than creating the illusion of a legitimate lived-in space, showing us the way all the residents are impacted also helps add to the sense of danger. Having everyone deal with the moon in their own ways, some fleeing town, others in ignorant defiance, it's not just a threat for Link to overcome anymore. It's a problem that's impacting the world at large, and it's spoken of as such. And with everyone suffering comes the responsibility for Link to help others in town. Each with lengthy and satisfying side quests to complete, there's a heavy emphasis on assisting others in Majora's that just isn't featured that prominently in other Zelda games. And it's these side quests that were the highlight of my playing experience. The side quests available in Majora's are both rewarding and satisfying to complete. If you barrel through this game, doing the bare minimum in order to see credits roll, let me put on my snootiest blazer to tell you for a second that I don't consider you to have really played Majora's Mask. Yeah, there's a narrative about the moon falling, but Link stopping it is kind of the least interesting story here. The real stars are the people of Termina and how their lives have been directly impacted. The meat of this experience is in its side quests, and I think Majora's exists as one of the best examples of them done right in all of video games. And I think it was able to do this because the side quests in Majora's Mask boasts 2 key features. The first being that they help world build, fleshing out the lives of the people that inhabit Termina to add to that sense of believability I mentioned. Take Kafei, for example, a man who was set to be married in 4 days' time to his lover Anju, but having been turned into a boy at the hand of the Skull Kid, he'd be seen as an easy target by a thief who would steal his ceremonial wedding mask. Kafei now locked up in his house, unable to attend his wedding without his mask and adult body. The entire ceremony in jeopardy as the moon inches ever closer. And it's through dilemmas like this that allow you to develop a better understanding of the world and just how consequential the Skull Kid's actions have been to everyone within it. The second feature, perhaps the more important, is their demand for both attention and perfection, as it's only because of this does completing side quests create satisfying gameplay and fulfilling progression. What I mean is, Majora's Mask requires a responsibility and a commitment whenever you accept a side quest. Unlike other video games where you might accept a side quest, you'll often find it won't begin until you're ready to tackle it. You might gather some items first, or leave it until right before the final boss, where you'll then go and talk to that NPC who has been eternally waiting for your arrival. In Majora's Mask, if Link isn't there at the time he was given, he'll just miss the opportunity to progress the side quest. It's gone. Time didn't wait for him, why would it? To do it again, you'll have to revert time all the way back to day one. This time positioning yourself to be there at the agreed upon hour. And say you actually get to tackle the side quest this time but mess it up, well, guess who's playing the Song of Time again? While it can initially appear cruel, I think it's this same pressure to learn and succeed that creates satisfying gameplay, as progression within Majora's is directly tied to how well you understand these 3 days. For example, having played the game before and now capturing footage for this video, here's a list of everything I did during my first 3 days after reverting Deku Scrub Link back into his child form, which is about 40 minutes into the game. Firstly, I helped the Great Fairy find her missing piece to receive the Great Fairy Mask, got the piece of heart in the tree previously unreachable as a Deku Scrub, got the Moon's Tear at the Observatory, got the Bomber's Notebook on the way out, traded my Moon's Tear for a title deed from this Deku, went to gather rupees from Termina Field, deposited them in my bank so I don't lose them upon reverting time, before returning to North Clock Town to witness the mugging that happens at midnight, preventing it to receive a Blast Mask as reward from the old lady, playing the inverted Song of Time to slow the flow of time, allowing me to get both Kamaro's Mask just outside of town, and to return to town to give the title deed to a hand in the toilet, don't worry about it, for another piece of heart, only to then go into the laundry pool to speak with Guru to receive the Bremen Mask, then sprinting back to West Clock Town to assist the Rosa sisters practice their dance with the Kamaro Mask equipped to receive another piece of heart. Then playing the Song of Double Time to fast forward to the second night to purchase the big bomb bag that is now available from the shop, then running over to Milk Road where a man is working to remove a large boulder blocking the way, playing the Song of Double Time to time travel forwards to the third day where he is now finished and I can pass through, allowing me to enter the Romani Ranch, equipping the Bremen Mask to help this depressed farmer with his final wish, the desire to witness his chicks transform into full-grown chickens, in which upon completion he gives me the bunny hood as reward, finishing by playing the Song of Time. I save the game, returning back to the dawn of the first day. It felt immensely satisfying to do all of this, because it's not something I could have done on my first playthrough. It was a direct result of my knowledge of this game and my understanding of the 3-day cycle. My first time properly playing this game, I encountered each of these events on completely separate play sessions, most of which I just stumbled upon by accident as a result of being in the right place at the right time. And what's amazing is that all of these events will occur every single time you play, every 3-day loop, regardless of whether you're there to see them or not. And witnessing these dilemmas, the drama, the struggles of others as the moon creeps ever closer, it helps feed into that idea of the believable, inhabited, functioning world that Link is only a small piece of, rather than having it revolve around him. In fact, I think you can make the argument that out of all the Zelda games, this is the one where Link is of the least importance. Not to the narrative, of course, he is the single savior of Termina, but when controlling him, he's not treated by the other characters as such. He's not this epic hero of time, there's no damsel to fawn over him, he's just some kid. Simply another body within Clocktown expected to help others as they all deal with this greater threat. And it's this way in which Majora's Mask changes the role of Link that I really enjoyed and gestured towards as a point in the game's favor. His relationship with both the plots and the people around him is completely different from anything else in the series. To explain what I mean, let's talk about a staple feature exclusive to the medium of video games. The fact that if the player does not input any commands, the narrative will not advance. Video games as a medium require participation in order to tell stories. However, in Majora's Mask, upon completing its short introduction/tutorial, you can place the controller down, and upon doing nothing, time will still move. The game will eventually reach its ending. It's not the good one, your lack of action will ensure the apocalypse, but the reason I mention this is because this entirely unique circumstance serves as evidence of this game's ethos. The idea that Majora's Mask doesn't particularly care about you. It will continue regardless of Link, regardless of whether you play it correctly. And it's because of reasons like this that I'd argue Link is no more than a vessel in this game, and for it, he couldn't be more endearing. He might have to play the role of messenger boy or settle disputes amongst adults, not because it'll have a large bearing on the outcome of the story, but rather just because it's the right thing to do. I honestly think that none of the rewards for the side quests that I've shown or talked about thus far were as gratifying as just seeing the situations play out and resolve. And I've always found Link's desire to help others particularly fascinating in Majora's, because I think this is also the game where there's the most pressure on him to succeed. While he's faced world-ending threats in the past, it's never felt more palpable than in Majora's Mask, where he literally has to quietly play God in order to defeat the Skull Kid, tampering with time, weather, and the lives of dozens of people to complete his quests, knowing precisely when and where events will occur. But despite his near-divine status, Link is still grounded in human emotion, with that will to serve others. And for me, it was seeing these side quests conclude and assisting these authentic characters with their issues in this unforgiving world that remained the defining part of my experience. Despite my admiration though, I can still acknowledge it's a game that isn't perfect. Menu navigation can be finicky, the dungeons are limited and vary in quality, and using the bow is still the worst, but because of what this game did for me at a very specific time in my life, none of that stuff particularly matters. It's a game that I can recognize is objectively flawed, but I can also find charm in those same imperfections. However, that remains a sentiment that I think its creators don't necessarily agree with. In fact, I think its flaws are the only thing they can focus on. I'd like to briefly touch upon the remake of Majora's Mask, released in 2015 for the Nintendo 3DS. For many, it was their first chance to check out Majora's Mask, which, since its release 15 years prior, had acquired this mystique around it for reasons we'll get into. But for Nintendo, this was their chance to fix what they perceived as mistakes. Majora's Mask 3D would contain various differences and changes from the original, many for the better. Saving had become much easier and gyroscope aiming was a godsend, but for every positive change came a second, unexplainable one. And it's here where I'd like to discuss the man behind Majora's Mask, as it's become apparent that its co-director, Eiji Aonuma, is a man who's somewhat ashamed of his own creation. In multiple interviews in the lead up to Remake's release, Aonuma would share that he thought there was something wrong with him during the creation of the original. While planning the remake, he'd compiled a list of things that he thought needed to be changed or scrapped that he'd title his What in the World list. Ideas that he was either embarrassed of or couldn't explain as to why he'd initially put them in. And seeing Aonuma wishing he'd had his time again with the original Majora's Mask kind of shook me. There's something difficult about seeing people appreciate your own work when, in your eyes, it's awful. My own videos have been a constant source of frustration for me. They never turn out the way I want them to, they exist out of compromise. And I'm not sure I would have been able to continue doing this if not for the ability to delete my old early videos that I've grown to become extremely embarrassed and self-conscious of. And I mention this because that's an option Aonuma doesn't have. Any changes he wants to make had to occur within this new version, contributing to the discussion of whether or not creators have the right to go back and change the original property, as the argument can be made that once you release your thing into the world, you're kind of signing away the right to call that yours. Regardless of your intentions or the meaning you as the creator have given to it, its ultimate impact, value, and relevance will be entirely decided by the collection of people who consume it. And I think that's what's happened here with Majora's Mask. Since its release, Majora's has slowly become this bizarre internet thing. It's been constantly subjected to endless fan theories, appearing in multiple creepypastas, and is currently the basis of a long-running and popular alternate reality game. And while it's certainly interesting to see Majora's take this new form for its old fans, you have to wonder if all of this has left Aonuma resenting what he'd created. We'll never know for sure, but I think Majora's legacy might be one of the many reasons why Nintendo are hesitant to embrace darker themes in their main media franchises. If their instant takedowns of fan games are anything to go by, you'd be safe to assume that they don't particularly like what the idea of Majora's Mask is to the people that have gathered around it. Which I think is a real shame because Majora's exists as this exciting example of the kinds of different stories Nintendo can tell when their tether is slightly loosened. I can only imagine the kinds of narratives Super Mario or Pokemon are capable of telling if they would just tiptoe down some slightly more obscure avenues like Majora's did. As only because it was weird and different, Majora's Mask would leave an impact on me that was extremely formative, which is what I think it's all about. I live for that feeling of having grown as a result of experiencing a story. And at a time where I needed to hear it most, I found Majora's Mask to be a lesson in existentialism, in helping others overcome hardship if only because it's the right thing to do, and in appreciating what you have because soon it might be taken from you. So to Lil Paulie, who's no doubt watching this in the past, sent to him from the future, just wanted to say, hey, I'm probably dead, and just wanted to let you know from beyond the grave that your hot take is bad. Anyway, thanks, love you, bye.